This city. It carries so many stories, so many places that speak of struggle, resilience, and hope. Down here at Tolleson Plaza, it's one of my favorite spots. Just look at this place, right here in the heart of Tacoma. A powerful tribute to Black lives, to dignity and justice. I feel proud just standing here, proud that my city chose such a strong, powerful testament to civil rights and equality. And this mural reminds me of why I do the work that I do, why I believe in building peace and hope, and why justice isn't just an idea, it's a responsibility. But when people talk about the civil rights movement, they know about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, but I keep wondering, who were the people who shaped civil rights and social justice in Tacoma? And how did my town grow into such a vibrant testimony to social justice and diversity? There has to be a story there. So the question is, who can I talk to in order to learn more about civil rights and social justice in my town?
If you really want to know about civil rights in Tacoma, and you really want to get stories from someone who is still alive and kicking, still alive and working, you got to talk to Lyle Quasim.
Kwabi, if you really want to know about civil rights, social justice, economic justice, and Black political power, you need to talk to Lyle Quasim.
Kwabi, if you really want to know about the Black collective, what's going on politically in Tacoma, you need to meet with Lyle Quasim.
He's a guy that has all the tools, and just listening to him, you understand why things work or why they fail to do so. He's the man. Lyle Quasim is the guy you want to talk to.
If you want to experience the master class, talk to Lyle Quasim.
Kwabi, the first person that I would put you in contact with is Lyle Quasim.
It turned out it was easy to find Mr. Lyle Quasim. He has been the leader of the Black collective here in Tacoma for many years. Every Saturday morning, people gather at the Colored Women's Club on Yakima Avenue. When I attended my very first meeting, I felt right at home. They were all so welcoming.
Got you, then I got me, that's cool, but I want community. If you got you, then I got me, that's cool, but I want community. If you got you, then I got me, that's cool, but I want community.
The first person I met at the Black Collective was Miss Ellen Smith, the official greeter.
Oh my God, the Black Collective is an organization that if you're a person of color, that you want to definitely be involved. It's a get together where you know what's going on in our local community, in our state, in the country, and everywhere. So we talk about just anything and everything.
Then I ran into the man himself, Mr. Lyle Quasim.
Yes. I'm so happy that you showed up, that you see us, and that you're engaged.
As I learned more about the organization, I found out that the Black Collective had been around since 1969, which was an interesting time for civil rights across the country and even right here in Tacoma. Some say what sparked the Black Collective here in Tacoma was an explosive event that happened on the hilltop on Mother's Day in 1969.
69, on Mother's Day, we had an abbreviated riot in Tacoma.
The incident began with the arrest of a Black couple following a brief confrontation in the hilltop area. A crowd formed. Emotions ran hot.
When that thing explodes, it's not over the issue you would like to see it explode over. Whatever triggers the community at that time is what they will go off on.
People in the community followed the police officers down to the county city building. They broke a window or two in the back of the county city building.
They were young and they were caught up in what was taking place around the country too. I mean, they were seeing the riots. They were seeing this protest and this fight for civil rights. But all of a sudden, everybody was in the street. there were folks all over K Street.
Mother's Day night, windows were broken, Molotov cocktails were thrown.
It could have been very ugly. There was Reverend Brazil and Reverend Bowles that really kind of got the kids off the street and slowed that thing down. The importance of the Mother's Day riot was that we were able to get an urban coalition of business people and community people together that decided we're not going to have a riot. We're not going to burn our city down.
Yeah, around the spring of 1969, what we found was a conservative populist serving as mayor, very reactive in terms of his approach, and he had allies on the city council. They had been fighting over the issue of the Human Relations Commission, so the city was essentially a tinderbox prior to what happened on that day. And of course, we know what happened. There was the incident with the police officer, and there were gunshots and so on. And the city was on the verge of exploding. Came very close. And there were certain heroes that saved the city and the hill. And Reverend E.S. Brazil was one. Reverend Bowles was another from the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance. Jim Walton was out there. He'd been the head of the Black Students Union, called the Obie Society at Tacoma Community College, I believe at the time. The city manager, Dave Rollins, was out there on the street. Harold Moss was out there on the street. And they convinced the people who were milling about with, Molotov cocktails, perhaps stowed. They convinced the folks to go home. And they saved the city. And they're among Tacoma's real heroes, in my view.
And so I found out that out of this group of heroes, the Black Collective was born.
We then started having meetings at a restaurant there on 17th and Martin Luther King Jr. Way now. It was just K Street then, and we just kept meeting, and we branched out, and it was magic, really, how we came together, because we had this sense of trying to be established. We were in the community, and I certainly was one of the newer members to this community and was going to school at Tacoma Community College. But for my being able, through Reverend Brazil, to be taken in and trusted by the ministers of that period of time was a godsend. Lyle Quasim became a part of this emerging group sometime later, as I recall, because we moved around where we were having meetings, because the number of people who were participating was growing. And then we moved to the Colored Women's Association Clubhouse, and we've been there ever since.
So, Mr. Walton, what makes Lyle Quasim such a great leader for the Black Collective?
Well, Lyle, to me, kind of captured the African American spirit, if you would. He was a guy that I would say was kind of self-made, which is no certain thing. But God's creation of Lyle gave him a bag of resources that he was able to use to assist us in organizing and taking on initiatives and et cetera. He had a combination skill set that would work in the community on the ground, as well as in boardrooms and when you strategize and et cetera. He had the leadership skills and the insight that was rare in one single person.
Lyle chairs the collective and facilitates the agenda, etc. But it is very clear to everyone that is what makes the collective unique and has been sustained is because it's an amalgamation of so many people from different experiences, different walks of life. The collective is an environment that invites, that recognize everyone has something to say. There are no titles. The person that's homeless has as much voice as the mayor of Tacoma. It's not about who's saying what, it's what you have to say. And so that is one of the reasons I would say the collective has not been duplicated or replicated anywhere. And it is in large part Lyle that has created that culture and that atmosphere. I would say Lyle is a servant leader. He enjoys empowering people. I think, in my opinion, he prefers to the power of influence as opposed to the power of authority.
I learned that Mr. Quasim had been the spirit of the Black collective in Tacoma since the 1970s, which explains why everyone said he was the person to talk to about civil rights and social justice in Tacoma. I wanted to know more about his story and how he found Tacoma. So I invited the spirited Black leader to take a walk around Hilltop with me. I found out that Lyle Quasim's story could fill an entire library. In just a few minutes with him, you become a friend, and you learn Mr. Lyle is a man who lives by his favorite saying: show up, suit up, and engage.
So I arrived in Tacoma in 1967. It was very interesting. I was 23 years old, and most of the new recruits were 18 and 19 years old. And they had come from various parts of the country, and I had been socialized in a big city urban experience. And so I thought Tacoma was a nice little place. It was about the size of my neighborhood in Chicago. One of the first things that I realized that I had grown up in the Black community in Chicago, and it was a Black community. And I looked for the Black community in Tacoma, and they told me it was primarily on the hilltop. I was struggling with politics and the war in Vietnam. I developed a volunteer activity at Raymond Hall in 1968, working as a volunteer at the juvenile detention facility. I'm in Tacoma, and I'm volunteering, but I had an interesting political background. I brought with me what I would call a socialist perspective. I grew up in a progressive family. My mother was a trade unionist. I was very close to the Nation of Islam in Chicago, and I had seen a lot of prominent Black figures. Then I was drafted in then I was given orders to go to Vietnam. And I said to the people at McCord Air Force Base, I'm in the Air Force because I didn't want to go to Vietnam. And they said, well, you know, this is the way it works.
Wait a minute. I remember seeing your story on Vietnam on the local KBTC PBS station years ago when the station was doing Vietnam perspectives. Was that you?
Now, I was much against the war before I went to Vietnam. I was bat crazy against the war when I came back, because I saw what the war was, and I couldn't get to the why. I knew the who, the what, the where, and the how, but I didn't understand the why. And I just thought, what a waste, what a con game, what a fiasco to kill hundreds of thousands of people and to somehow marginalize the lives of Vietnamese people and glorify the deaths of Americans. For what? For absolutely nothing. And for reasons that I believed, and those reasons were, why would I be in an oppressive war against Vietnamese people who had not done anything to me? So I came here with that perspective, anti-war perspective. So many of the acquaintances I made, they were positive people I really came to admire, to enjoy being around, but we did not have the same value proposition around issues related to social justice versus issues related to economic development.
The more I talked to Mr. Quasim and those other positive people he had met at that time, I began to realize that Mr. Lyle was a significant leader at a number of institutions in Tacoma, in addition to the Black Collective. Mr. Willie Stewart Sr. has been a fan of Lyle's for many years.
I've known Lyle Quasim for at least 40 years now, in various capacities here in our city, from the Safe Streets to Secretary of Health and Welfare for the state, to the interim president at Bates Vocational School, to his active involvement with the Black Collective and one of the co-founders, as well as his involvement with the NAACP, and just community groups all the time. But one purpose in mind is just a desire to make sure there's equity in the lives of everyone. I say that Lyle is probably best described as an all-American person with a variety of interests, but each has an interest for the improvement for the quality of life of all people, with heavy emphasis on the unrepresented groups in our community.
So as an all-American person, Lyle Quasim has had a great many jobs and a great many stories. He taught at the Black Panther Liberation School in L Street in Tacoma, which led to his first local job as a classification counselor at the Purdy Treatment Center for Women.
Then I was offered a position in state government as a mental health administrator, and my responsibility was to implement drug treatment programs in penitentiaries. And we were successful in 1979 of putting together a really comprehensive involuntary treatment center which focused on the civil rights of patients. And I was then appointed as the first non-physician to be the director of 4 state hospital entities at Western State Hospital, Eastern State Hospital, Child Study and Treatment Center.
It's a lot of responsibility. Would you say that's probably the most difficult job you've ever had?
The most difficult job that I have ever had was when I was the director of the state psychiatric hospitals. In that position as the director, I had 4 people reporting to me. They were 4 psychiatrists, all medical doctors with a specialty in psychiatry. And the person I reported to was a psychiatrist. And you have a non-psychiatrist in the middle of those 2 things. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff professionally. There's a lot of stuff going on in terms of race, having some black gentlemen overseeing these activities. And I was in that position for about 4 years, and then I was fired.
Mr. Lyle, you were fired?
I was very lucky. I was fired as state mental health director, and then I was rehired by the next governor. I was fired by one governor, and the next governor who came in and said, I like the reasons that you were fired, because you would not bend to the will and not speak truth to power. And I need somebody in my administration who will tell me the damn truth, no matter if it costs him or her their job. And that's why I was hired by the next governor.
So what did you do in between being fired as the state mental health director and then being appointed as the first black man to head the State Department of Social and Health Services?
When I was fired as state mental health director, I came back to this community which was in a difficult situation. And in fact, I did a TEDx talk on the Safe Streets campaign. And what I saw in my community was a lot of dysfunction. A lot of dysfunction around all of the causative factors that would lead a community to succumb to issues around drugs and gangs and violence. And we knew what those causative factors were. What we did is we put together a program called the Safe Streets Campaign.
So I saw this news story on 48 Hours back in 1990. It was the year I was born. And it was all about safe streets in Tacoma. That was you, right?
The idea was that we had seen what's happening in Los Angeles. We didn't want to look like Los Angeles. We didn't want to look like Oakland. We didn't want to look like Newark. That was the idea. The idea was that we had seen the end of the movie, and we decided to change the script.
Quasim's job, organize neighborhoods to fight crime.
A tactic in one community may be to picket. A tactic in another community may be to get business organized, labor organized, the religious community organized, citizens on a block organized. It is, each one has its own prescription.
And the Rockefeller Foundation looked at innovations in America. And we were one of those innovations that were recognized in that Rockefeller Foundation review. So external validation, the Kennedy School of Government. External validation, the Rockefeller Foundation. Local validation, reduction of gangs, drugs, violence. Local validation, better metrics in many of the communities that we served in terms of mitigating some of the causes of drugs and gangs and violence.
Every single car that passes through here is tracked. You know, we keep track of it. We take down the license numbers and we just encourage it.
You know, it's basically a harassment of the guy, isn't it?
No, it is the harassment that occurs is when there are 50 cars driving through this neighborhood creating unsafe conditions. I think the
pills on the gravel out here, drug paraphernalia, and the message is clear in this neighborhood. They're outnumbered.
I think the gift that Lyle Quasim brought to Safe Streets was empowerment. We always knew that the answer was in the community, and it was more a matter of trying to figure out how do you get people to step up and step out.
Well, Miss Priscilla, Safe Streets was a good idea in theory, but did it really work in practice?
I've got to tell you this story. So about 2 years after Safe Streets got going, you always ask the question, is this really working? So the Seattle media was famous for coming down and looking for all the problems in Tacoma and featuring all of our drug dealing and everything. And so they went into a neighborhood in the Hilltop, and this group was having a little neighborhood party. So they were around with their camera, and this interviewer went up to this one woman and said, so you feel better now? Yeah, everything's better. Safe Streets is great. Well, how do you know Safe Streets really works? The woman looked, and she looked right in the camera, and she said, Domino's now delivers pizza to my house.
Priscilla was great. Sometimes you just get lucky. And in my TED Talk, I talked about this convergence from a person who had been fired from a highly successful mental health career with a budget of about $1 billion to come back to my community and have a budget of about $500,000. We would not have been the success we were without Priscilla.
So your success at Safe Streets, it led you to your biggest job yet, the Secretary of the Department of Social and Health Services. That's a big job, Lyle. What was your philosophy of success there?
When I became the head of the largest agency in state government, and I served on 2 different governors' cabinets, I told those folks, I am who you are. I came up in this system. Every job that you could have had at a direct service level, at a supervisory level, at a program level, at a management level, I've had all those jobs. So whatever is good about state service, whatever is good about public service is good about me. Whatever is bad about public service is bad about me. And so my goal in working with, at one time I had 17,000 employees, I said, you know, I'm not some fortunate son. I represent you, you know, and I represent the goals that you have. And I would hope people would see their public employment as public service.
You were the first black person in that position. Did that make it especially challenging?
As a black person, it is even more difficult because they assume either that you don't have, well, they don't assume it. They determine that you don't have the same runway that a white administrator would have. And one of the lessons that I had learned when I had become secretary of the Department of Social and Health Services was a mistake that I made when I was the mental health director, is that I assumed if I did a good job, that I had the same opportunities and latitudes as the other people in my positions. And that was not true. It was definitely not true. It is hard for people to take a decision that they don't agree with from a person of color, from a black person, male, who is confident in who he is and unapologetic about who he is and clear about the circumstances that brought me to this position.
I've been talking to people in the community, a lot of people of color, and all of them tell me the same thing, that you had a huge impact on their life.
Lyle has done so much for this city and has a breadth and depth of experience that can be held up. No, I mean, I don't know anybody who can hold a candle to Lyle. He is just, sometimes I say this about people, and I mean it about Lyle. He's an amazing human being. He can speak truth to power. His experiences and the way he's been able to lead in the civil rights movement and continues today, still fighting for and struggling with the best outcome for African Americans in this area. He's masterful at guiding the Black collective. He is and he's incredibly brilliant. I mean, the man has done everything from running the Department of Social and Health Services for the state to being the interim president at Bates Technical College, to being a civil rights leader and fighter in this community. He's been a part of founding organizations like Community Health Care.
So I think when you talk about words like honor and dignity, those are terms that are earned. And Lyle has put in the work. And he's been with this community for a long time. He's never wavered in his support for people of color, especially the African American community. I want to make sure that's a very important point here. Yeah. And I would say that, you know, people use those words because he's effective. And the thing I've always appreciated most about Lyle is that he moves in so many different spaces. And he shows up because he knows that if we are not in these spaces, then we will not have people who are listening to our concerns.
And you know what? There's a lot of prominent white Tacomans who said that they learned a lot from you.
What I learned from Lyle certainly involved the history, some about the history of civil rights in this area. Certainly something about the issues that the Black community has faced here over the years and continues to face, because Lyle's been very involved in some of those issues. You know, occasionally something will come up between the police and the Black community, and Lyle gets involved in that kind of context. And more broadly, you know, he I think was sort of the founder or a founder of the Safe Streets campaign. And that's been very effective, I believe, in dealing with gang issues over the years and just general issues of safety in the Hilltop area, and I'm sure other areas. So I just have so much admiration for him.
Then I learned just how smart a man he really is, because he took me to the woodshed big time. And it was over the issue of, I had been selected by Mayor Strickland to chair a charter review committee. And the majority of the committee came up with a proposal to change the form of government to a mayor, council, CEO system, whereby the mayor would not be on the council, but would be the chief executive officer of the city. And the Black Collective had come in opposition to our position. So he was on the other side of the debate. And I got to see him in another role, not as a friend and cohort, but as an adversary. And I picked myself off the mat and said, whoa, this guy, It was not a pleasant experience, let's put it that way. And you know, I've run for office on a number of occasions, 4 times, and in my last my first campaign for mayor, I was not on the city council at the time, and I always held my own during debates and discussions, but I've never really came up against someone like Lyle.
So you've worked with a lot of elected officials. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I didn't realize how I was moving in that direction. But in 1979, Governor Dixie Lee Ray was really critical of our mental health system, especially our hospitals getting accredited, and she wanted to go in a different direction. Physicians had historically been the directors of the hospitals, and I applied to be the first non-physician director of 4 psychiatric facilities, 3 hospitals and 1 residential facility. And it was very interesting. She was a contrarian. And so she wanted to make things different. Then I worked for a Republican governor who appointed me to be the state mental health director. And then I started to work for Booth Gardner, local person from, and the Republican governor's name was John Spellman. And then Booth Gardner, a Democrat, local Pierce County person. I was already state mental health director when he became governor, and it was a gubernatorial appointment. And when Mike Lowry decided not to run for a second term, there were 2 candidates, Norm Rice, who was African American and mayor of Seattle, and Gary Locke, who was Chinese American, and the King County executive. And when Gary won that election, he asked me to stay on as secretary of the Department of Social and Health Services as a cabinet member. And then when I retired, I came to Pierce County. And my very favorite of all time elected officials was County Executive John Ladenburg. We were simpatico. And it was very fulfilling working for an elected official. All of those folks brought various qualities to my experience in working in government, and it was just outstanding.
So, you've worked with both Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
How is that possible? You know, it seems as if those factions of people are so separate.
I had a lot of Republican support when I was working for a Democratic governor. Clyde Ballard in Eastern Washington was the Speaker of the House as a Republican. Alex Dicio from Yakima, another Republican. In the long run, I try to make our relationships product-oriented. I want to say, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, you want good government. Whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, you want somebody who understands that their first responsibility is to the taxpaying public, their next responsibility are to the people we serve, and our third responsibility are to the people who provide that service. And I've always gone to those elected officials with that approach. And it kind of erases the line between Democrat and Republican folks.
So what would you say is the most important aspect of being president of Bates Community Technical College?
There was one other really, really important thing for me about Bates, other than the job, other than the job as president, or the position as a trustee or being on the state board. I saw people who came here whose hopes and dreams were wrapped in gaining a particular skill set and being able to engage in the life and economy in the Pacific Northwest. And for a lot of these individuals, because we had a lot of people who were not just out of high school, but had lived experiences, and they were trying to figure out how to reposition themselves in order to be a part of this community in such a way that they had something to give and needed something to take. And I thank the Bates community and the Board of Trustees for allowing me to participate.
Well, when I arrived here in 2016, kind of brand new to the area, there were a list of people that I was given that I should meet as the head of this public television station. And Lyle Quasim's name was one of them. And I reached out to him, and we had an opportunity to have lunch together. And there's just something so wonderful and warm about him, and he was very welcoming and very helpful to me, and we just kind of fell into a professional friendship. And I called upon him to do a number of different activities with us. So he has served as an advisor to the station and our team of producers here on a number of projects. And he had been served as president of Bates Technical College at one time. So we had that in common as well, because Bates Technical College holds the license to the station. And a lot of people, were familiar with his work. And there was a time when we used to convene a lot of community educators and people who were deeply committed to the welfare of children. And he was one of them, and he became one of our William P. Moeller champions for children. And we were able to give recognition to his work at a breakfast.
It is very difficult to be a hero in your own hometown, because they say, oh, that's just Bill or Lyle or Sam or Joe. So when people in your own hometown kind of recognize some of the things that you've done, it really is special.
Mr. Lyle and I got to be pretty good friends. It was an honor when he invited me into his home and introduced me to his wife, Sheila. Moving from room to room, the tributes and artifacts told a story of deep purpose and commitment. Yet, another story quietly unfolded alongside it. A man devoted to black justice, sharing more than 40 years of marriage with a white woman. It raised a question I couldn't ignore. You've done so much in regards to civil rights for African Americans. You're married to a white woman.
Yes, yes. and what is most important is that you have the same value proposition, that you have the same worldview, and you are a soldier for justice. And that, to me, covers any other issues that people think may be inconsistent.
It's a mindset thing.
It's a mindset. It's what you believe. It is what you believe.
Walking around his home and sharing laughs with Mr. Lyle was a treat. Then I got to ask Mr. Lyle a question that I've been thinking of since I heard about him from everybody. Quasim.
Yes.
This name, it's very unique.
Right.
Where does it come from?
So, in around 1969 or so, I was in the military, and I wasn't in control of very much. And then one day I said, well, what is it that I can control? And I thought about, the African diaspora. People, I should call it the Atlantic Ocean diaspora. People cross the Atlantic from Europe, and they were primarily the same person when they arrived in America. And then I realized that there was nobody by the name of Rogers in Africa. So why is my name Lyle Rogers? And I said, of the things that I can do, that's one of the things I can do. I can change my damn name. And I decided, to do that. When I went to Superior Court, the judge said to me, I have your paperwork with reference to your name change, and now I want to hear in your own words why you are changing your name. And I said to the judge, those are my words. He said, no, the lawyers did that for you. I want to hear your words. I said, I've been explaining shit to white people all my life, and my attorney said, we withdraw our petition. And he said, Lyle, let's go. And I said, what are we doing? He said, because you're getting ready to go to jail. And I said, oh, okay. And we left. And so the first attempt to have my name changed was aborted because I had a judge who, for some reason, did not think I had the ability to articulate why I wanted to change my name, and somebody had articulated that for me. And that's why he said in your own words.
There's so many ways that Mr. Lyle has brought justice and equity to our community. He served on the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation Board of Directors in the early 1990s. He also served as Chief of Staff for Pierce County Executive John Landenberg, and he worked for 3 governors in our state. I had to find out, why hadn't he run for public office himself? Have you personally been involved? You know a lot of politicians.
Yeah.
Have you personally been involved in politics? Like ran for?
Oh, no, I would never run for office.
Wait, why?
And I have people whom I respect immensely who have run for office. Right. And for me, it would be too much of a compromise for me to run for office because it would just be too much of a compromise. I see people who twist themselves up in the knots trying to represent all aspects of the community, which is their responsibility, and I love them for it. I respect them for it. I could not do that.
And you might have already noticed, Mr. Lyle is well known throughout the Tacoma community as a person with a great sense of humor and a booming laugh. So much rich culture, African-American culture, and progress within Tacoma. What is needed now for Black progress within civil rights in the city of Tacoma?
It is 2 things. One is that we have to have a big tent strategy. Whether you have some difficulties accepting some issues, you have more in common than you have in differences. And don't let your differences separate you from engaging with the things that we all as Black folks hold in common. The second thing that we need to understand is that there will always be casualties when you move as a person who is trying to have a more just community. There's a smooth side of the mountain, and there's a rough side of the mountain. And the smooth side of the mountain, people often want to move in that direction, but you don't learn much on the smooth side of the mountain. And change occurs on the rough side of the mountain, and that's where we have to root. We have to root on that side of the mountain, knowing that there's danger, but also knowing that there's opportunity, and knowing that if we have a good view of the future that we can hold in common as opposed to dealing with the smaller differences that we have, then I think we can continue to move forward. If there was one thing that I love about Tacoma, is the physical space is great, but the human engagement here is so powerful. This is not New York, this is not Chicago, this is my hometown. This is a community where you can engage and attach yourself to individuals and causes where you can see that you can make a difference.
I went looking for stories about civil rights and social justice in Tacoma. I didn't expect to walk away with a new friend, but that's exactly what happened. Meeting Lyle Quasim changed the way I see my city, and honestly, it changed the way I see my role in it. I learned about a man who didn't just talk about justice, he lived it. Who didn't wait for change, he showed up for it. Lyle's been a champion for social justice in Tacoma for decades, not for recognition, not for applause, but because he believes in his community. And his motto, it says it all. Show up, suit up, and engage. Those aren't just words, they're a way of life. I didn't just learn history. I learned what it means to be a part of it. And I walked away with something even better than answers. I walked away inspired.
Same beat, same street, laugh lines deeper than the rent receipts. Hands up high when the day feels heavy. We lift each other, yeah, we move it steady. All of the one, that's how we shine. Your good day tangled up in mine. If you got you, then I got